हाँ जी मैम, तो अभी आप स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं ना, मैं चेक कर ले रहा हूँ नेटवर्क, आप थोड़ा सा इसके साथ टाइम के साथ आगे जा सकते
Doctor, we'll proceed with this particular PPT which you have right now. Okay. And I'm supposed to give some more instructions. Let us check with the connections first of all, and we shall proceed later.
Okay. Let me just connect this.
Yes, proceed, doctor.
Should I open my PPT here? No, I can open it. No.
Yes.
Okay. Can I start now?
Sure.
Hello dear students, this is Dr. Poonam here. The topic of today's session is cerebrum. So as we all know, the cerebrum, it is the largest part of the forebrain or the human brain, and you can see this is the image of the cerebrum and this is the superior view. Here you can see it is made up of two parts. So each part of the cerebrum is called as the cerebral hemisphere. So it means it has two cerebral hemisphere, the right cerebral hemisphere and the left cerebral hemisphere. So this is the next image which is showing the superolateral surface of the cerebrum, and here you can see it has so many elevations and depression on the surfaces. And why these elevations and depressions are present here? So the reason for it, this cerebrum, it has to accommodate into a cranial cavity, and this cranial cavity, it is a very small cavity, and the cerebrum, it is very large and extensive. So what happens, this cerebrum, it has to fix into that small cranial cavity, so that's how it will undergo the convolutions, and due to these convolutions it has these elevations and depression occurs, and these elevations and depressions are called as the sulci and gyri. So here you can see the sulci and gyri on all the surfaces of the cerebral hemisphere. Now you can see this is the image which is showing both cerebral hemisphere, including the brain stem and the cerebrum. So here you can see the cerebrum, it has two parts. So each part is called as the cerebral hemisphere. Now each cerebral hemisphere, they are connected with one another with the help of a structure, and that structure is called as the corpus callosum. So as you can see here, this is the corpus callosum, and you can see it on only medial surface of the cerebral hemisphere. So each cerebral hemisphere has superolateral surface where you can find so many elevations and depressions. They are called as the sulci and gyri, and on the medial surface it has this identification mark here. This is called as the corpus callosum. Now what is this corpus callosum? It is made up of a bundle of white fibers. Now what these bundle of white fibers are doing, they are connecting both cerebral hemisphere so that the information can transfer from one cerebral hemisphere to another. So it basically, it is a connection here. So that's how our both cerebral hemispheres, they are connected with one another. Now we have this surface here. Here you can see this is the superolateral surface, and there is one more thing which is related to this corpus callosum. So sometimes what happens, this corpus callosum, it is absent congenitally. So what happens in that case, there is no connection between two cerebral hemispheres, and in this condition both cerebral hemispheres, they will act as a individual brain, and this kind of syndrome is called as the split brain syndrome. So split brain syndrome, it can be occur if there is no connection or absence of the corpus callosum between both cerebral hemispheres. So that's how we can understand this. Now we have this surface here, and this is called as the superolateral surface of the cerebrum. So what is the feature of the superolateral surface of the cerebrum? So entirely this is convex, and it has, you can see it has three ends here. One is this, the another one is this, and this one. So all these three ends are called as the poles of the cerebrum. So it has three poles: occipital pole, frontal pole, and temporal pole. Now the thing is, how you will identify which one is frontal pole and which one is the occipital pole, because it is obvious the temporal pole, it is in between the frontal and occipital. So there is the identification point for both poles, like frontal and the occipital. So here in this diagram you can see the occipital pole, it is narrower than the frontal pole. So you will see the narrower one, that is the occipital pole, and the broader end of the cerebrum which is directed anteriorly, and this must be your frontal pole. So we have two poles, frontal pole and occipital pole, and in between there is this pole which is called as the temporal pole. Now we will talk about the cranial cavity. So we all know the cerebrum, it is occupying the cranial cavity. So to accommodate the part or the pole of the cerebrum, this cranial cavity, it is dividing into three parts. So we have anterior cranial fossa, we have posterior cranial fossa, and we have middle cranial fossa. Now we all know this is the frontal pole, this is the occipital pole, and this is the temporal pole. So according to that cranial cavity, the frontal pole, it is occupying your anterior cranial fossa because it is directed anteriorly. Now we have this pole, it is directed, it is present, or it is occupying the posterior cranial fossa. Now we have this part here, this temporal pole. So now it is obvious this temporal pole, it must be occupying our middle cranial fossa. So we have these three poles occupying all three cavities, all three divisions of the cranial cavity. Now on the superolateral surface, hence it has so many elevations and depressions here. So the elevations are called as the gyri, and the depression between the elevations, they are called as the sulci. So to study the sulci and gyri of the cerebrum hemisphere, or to make this study convenient, we have divided the cerebrum into lobes. So we have frontal lobe, we have parietal lobe, we have temporal lobe, and we have occipital lobe. So each lobe has different sulci and gyri on it. So to understand this sulci and gyri on each lobe of the cerebrum hemisphere, we should know how these lobes are present here and how we will divide each cerebral hemisphere into four parts or four lobes. So here you can see this is the diagram which is showing the general division of cerebral hemisphere, and that's how it is dividing into four different parts. So here we have mainly central sulcus, we have lateral sulcus, we have parieto-occipital sulcus. So with the help of these three major sulcus, we will be able to divide the cerebral hemisphere into four lobes. So first we have the central sulcus. So this central sulcus, it is appearing on the superolateral surface after cutting the superomedial border. So here you can see this is the central sulcus. Now between the frontal pole and the temporal pole, we have one sulcus appearing here which is going towards the occipital pole, and this sulcus is called as the lateral sulcus. Now we have another sulcus here which is called as the parieto-occipital sulcus. So from the posterior 1/3 part of the superomedial border, we have this sulcus is appearing here, and this is called as the parieto-occipital sulcus. Now what we need to do, we just have to draw the imaginary lines here. So we will draw the first imaginary line which is running from parieto-occipital sulcus to this notch here, and this notch is called as the pre-occipital notch. Now remember one thing, this pre-occipital notch, it is also identification point for the occipital pole. With the help of this pre-occipital notch, you can identify the occipital pole, because this notch, it is towards the, or it is nearer to the occipital pole. That's why the name is given pre-occipital notch. So what we need to do here, we will draw the first imaginary line which is joining parieto-occipital sulcus and pre-occipital notch. So that's how we have got our first imaginary line. Now we need to draw this second imaginary line, and that's how we can divide this entire cerebral hemisphere into 4 lobes. So this second imaginary line, we will draw it from this lateral sulcus, the posterior end of lateral sulcus. We will draw this line towards the first imaginary line, and this line is called as the second imaginary line. So we have got first imaginary line, we have got second imaginary line, we have central sulcus here, we have lateral sulcus here, we have parieto-occipital sulcus here. So that's how you can see the lobe which is in front of the central sulcus or superior to anterior part of lateral sulcus. This red marked lobe, it is called as the frontal lobe. Now we have parietal lobe which is posterior to the central sulcus or anterior to this first imaginary line, and it is called as the parietal lobe. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, doctor, your connections are absolutely smooth, and hopefully there is no issues today.
No, not at all. But I am finding difficulty for using this pen tab. I think I have to practice on this.
No, you have changed the screen. Check that. Check that. You have changed the screen settings. Correct it once. In the ops. No. Sagar, you are there?
I don't know, something happened to.
Hello, yes.
Some issues has happened with the screen. Correct it once.
So मैम कोई इशू नहीं है, हाँ बस हो गया, आप इसको ना एक बार, हाँ बस हो
Zoom
गया.
out करना था, yes.
So she is facing issue with her pen tab.
No, that is not any technical error. This is, I think, just I have to do the practice on this pen tab.
No, doctor, you can do one thing. I can understand that something what happens now with that pen tab, it makes us illiterate.
Yes.
Yeah, what you need to do is for this time in the description part, better you add more and more points in the typing itself. Okay, in the text format I am saying.
Yeah. Okay.
You can use that just to underline or just to round up or something like that. You use
Yeah,
this time.
that will be
Okay.
more convenient.
From next time when we get used to that, you can write over that.
Okay.
But this time I can understand you haven't used it a lot, used that pen tab a lot, so that you can just use it for underlining the text or rounding up the text or something like that.
Okay.
Just do that. Let us see whether it is possible or not, whether it is under your control or not. Let us see.
Okay. And what about my pace? It was okay, or it was a little bit fast or slow?
Yeah, I'll see that. I'll come to that point.
Yeah.
No, you check with the pen tab whether it is possible to underline, whether it is under your control or not.
Yeah, I can do it.
Try to write something, doctor.
Yeah. I cannot write on it.
This is
Let me
frontal. If I'm not wrong.
just change the font. It's
The thing what you written is frontal. Am I correct?
yeah. I'll do practice. I have one day. I'll do it.
Let us ask Sagar whether you have understood what she is.
No, I'll do it better.
No, you do one thing. You better use only for underlining. Okay. Okay, not an issue.
I can't use it. तो ये लिख, हाँ इधर ना, अभी तो दिख रहा है ना सागर? Is it clear to you?
हाँ जी मैम.
Sagar, can you read that particular thing? What she has written?
It is something written like front TA something frontal lobe.
Frontal lobe. Yes. No,
Yeah, something
actually,
like.
yeah. Okay, but Doctor, no. No, you read. What is this? What is this? Sagar?
It's a written pole.
Yeah. No.
It's sulcus
Very good.
maybe.
Yeah.
It's Cyrus.
Yeah. Doctor,
Gyrus.
you.
That is G.
Gyrus हाँ जी वो जी है मैम जी है
Yes,
वो.
yes.
मैम थोड़ा सा आपको इसमें प्रैक्टिस करना
Yes,
पड़ेगा. आपने
yes.
थोड़ा सा
But मैं
मतलब
सोच रही हूँ
शॉर्ट
फर्स्ट
लेटर
टाइम इतना
लिखिए.
रिस्क नहीं लेती हूँ. आई जस्ट जैसे सर बोल रहे हैं कि आई जस्ट हैव टू मेक दैट अंडरलाइन पार्ट और वो मैं कर लूँगी एरो बनाना. That I
Yeah,
will.
that is better because the thing, no, it may look something horrible if you write more and more things.
Sir, I'll practice it.
Yeah, yeah. No. Frankly speaking, Doctor, you feel, na, when we write more and more thing, it looks bad.
Yeah.
Unless and until we don't practice. Yeah, better what we do now, like for just underlining the medial surface or just underlining stem of lateral surface or something like that, you use the pen when it is required.
Yeah.
And if it is required to round up the particular aspect, you do that. Okay. And coming to your teaching, I don't have any objections. The thing is, Doctor, what you need to concentrate is, as it will be an interactive session, you concentrate on the students as well.
Yes. I need to do that.
Yeah. Like if there is, I don't have, any question if it is there, after reading that particular question and after reading that options, you better give them a chance or you better give the pause, let them check what option suits for this particular question and let them also comment on the chat box.
Yeah, basically I have to interact with them, no?
Yeah, basically you have to interact with them. And in the sense, one more thing which I have forgot to say is, you need to give a introduction to medicos community as well.
Yeah.
Like if you go through this one, what you call the previous live sessions of the different faculties, you can come to know what they have said.
Where I can find it? Where I can find the previous live sessions?
In the YouTube platform, Doctor.
No, on the day before I have searched it on YouTube, but I didn't find it anywhere with the name of Medicos community. I didn't find it.
In the medicos community, if you go, you will find the medicos community YouTube channel, right?
Okay, just I'll just do it now. Okay.
You do, if you have a phone, you check it, I'll see what to do.
Okay, because the day before I was trying to search it, but couldn't find it. I don't know.
Yes.
Medicos community.
You give us medicos community YouTube channels.
ये
Not the website.
this 148 subscribe वाला.
148. No, you show me.
I don't know. You will be able to.
No. Where you are searching actually? Search in the Google. You can see our logo. It is being displayed in the YouTube channel as well. No. Wait for a minute.
You can send me a link of your channel.
Yeah. That is what I am doing.
एक मिला तो है especially involved. Yeah, got it.
Have you got?
This one, no?
Yes.
Okay, I'll do it.
No, in the sense, in that particular channel, if you go through, you will get through live session. In that live session, faculties has given different introductions. Okay, that introduction you should go through and you make it on your own. Like you did not copy paste them actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And by tomorrow, when you come to the training session, I want that particular this one what you call introductory part to be prepared, because I need to see whether the things you have prepared is fitting into the particular situation or not. And one more thing is this particular thing what you should keep in mind. One more thing is very importantly, we are targeting the national exit test aspirants. We are not targeting NEET PG aspirants. But the session is supposed to happen for NEET PG aspirants. Don't get confused over the two things. The things what you are saying to purchase the courses, it is for those who are going to write national exit test, which is proposed for 2024.
Okay. Okay.
And what you are saying to the session, what you are handling the session, it is for NEET PG 2023, which is supposed to happen on 5th March.
So basically, you mean that I just have to mention about the NEET PG, but that content I have to make according to that national one. No, this is the thing.
No, in the sense, whenever we will prepare actually national exit test, also the thing remains the same. If the concept doesn't change, changes anyway. Concept will remain same.
Hmm.
But the thing is, like in the introductory part, if you go through our particular faculties, they said, please visit the medical community website to get the grab the early bird offers, and it is available for first 3,000 slots or something like that. They have said. So that there it is concentrated towards national exit test. And obviously, we are aware that we can't make NEET PG aspirants to purchase these courses while the exam is so near. It is only 45. It's a foolishness. So that you should say something related to national exit test, and you're supposed to go ahead with the first course. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
That introductory part is there. Now you go through the other faculties, you will come to know. And you go on your own. Sagar, mute down.
So should I stop streaming?
Sagar.